Greetings. This is Stan, and it's the end of St. Patrick's Day. The day has now come to an end, and there's been a lot of celebrating. A lot of people have had a good time. However, there is what we oftentimes call a backstory. That's right, a backstory. And what entrepreneurs have to get really good at is looking for the backstory. So, what I thought we would do today is just borrow from a good friend of mine a backstory that perhaps will help you see that there's more to St. Patrick than Irish, and more to St. Patrick than green, and more to St. Patrick than green beer. There's much more. And in fact, it's a story of how we can overcome who we are and what we've done, and we can make a lasting difference in the world. How we can be all that a Christian entrepreneur might be. That's the story of St. Patrick. And that's the story we're going to tell on Radio on the Edge right now. Yes, indeed. I just wanted to take a few minutes to go through what a friend of mine for the Institute of Faith, Work, and Economics, his name is Hugh Whelchel, and he has put together in the leadership of this wonderful organization a story about how we are to flourish, how we are to find God's will, both in our faith, in our work, in our economics, and most importantly in the work we do, and that it could be truly a calling. And what we as entrepreneurs have often discovered, and Christian entrepreneurs more than others have discovered, that if we're going to make it, the challenge that before us better not be just a job. Perhaps it might be something that's more important than that. It might be more than a career. It's truly a calling. And so, in honor of the story, the backstory of St. Patrick, I'm just simply going to take Hugh's wonderful story and try and retell it in an audio broadcast style. And this will be my gift to you, a new way of looking at the day we just celebrated. On March 17th, Irish culture enthusiasts around the world, of course, they'll dress in Kelly green and drink over 17 million pints of Guinness. The parties and parades that commemorate the Feast of St. Patrick, Ireland's most famous patron saint. This cultural and religious celebration is held on the traditional date of St. Patrick's death in 461. Yet most of those celebrating may not care too much about who St. Patrick was, nor the story of his conversion and devotion to the gospel that impacted not just Ireland, but indeed all of Western civilization. Patrick, or as he referred to himself in his native Latin, Patricius, wasn't even Irish, but was born to a middle-class clergyman and his wife toward the end of the Roman Empire's rule in Britain. When he was a teenager, Patrick's home, probably on the west coast of Britain, was attacked, and he was abducted by Irish raiders. Patrick was taken to Ireland and sold as a slave to an Irish king, where he served as a shepherd. Now, although his father was a clergyman, Patrick did not yet have a strong faith. In the despair of his alienated existence as a slave shepherd, he began reaching out to God. Many of us do that when times are tough. Patrick's confession tells us, "So I turned with all my heart to the Lord my God, and he looked down on my loneliness and had mercy on my youthful ignorance. He guarded me before I knew him, and before I came to wisdom and could distinguish between good and evil. He protected me and consoled me as a father does for his son." After 6 years of slavery, one night Patrick heard God speak to him. Yeah, God speaks to people. "Very soon you will return to your native country. Look, your ship is ready." Patrick ran away and traveled over 200 miles to the coast where, providentially, he was able to find passage on a ship about to depart for Britain. Patrick found his way back to his family, but was forever changed by the experience of his captivity, conversion, and flight for freedom. He felt God was leading him to the priesthood, and he eventually entered a monastery. Ultimately, he became a bishop in the church. And 30 years after he had escaped slavery, Patrick felt God calling him to carry the gospel back to Ireland. Patrick knew his task would not be easy, but he'd heard the people of Ireland calling to him in visions soon after he returned to Britain. They called out as if it were with one voice, "We beg you, holy boy, to come and walk among us." This touched my heart deeply. I woke up then, thanks be to God, after many years the Lord granted them what they were calling for. God blessed Patrick's work in Ireland, bringing thousands into the faith, in spite of opposition from the population that he came to serve. Knowing and having a heart for the people, Patrick was the right man at the right time to bring the gospel to Ireland. Right time, right place, that's oftentimes what an entrepreneur is all about. Well, Hugh continues, living out his calling to community, speaking out for the oppressed. Patrick shows us that the work, paid and unpaid, God calls us to do falls into 4 areas. Os Guinness writes in his book, The Call, God calls us to work in our vocation, our community, our faith, and our church. As a missionary, Patrick's call to vocation and church overlapped. But one thing that is often missed is how Patrick fulfilled his call to serve the community during his time in Ireland. Patrick's confession and letter to Coriticus inform us that he was one of the first Christian opponents of slavery. He was particularly concerned about how Christian women suffered in slavery. In addition, there are the widows. Of all these, those held in slavery work hard as they bear even terror and threat, but the Lord gives grace to so many of the women who serve him, even when it is forbidden. They bravely follow his example. Interestingly enough, in his book, How the Irish Save Civilization, Thomas Cahill also describes how Patrick brought literacy and learning to the Irish people, creating conditions that allowed Ireland to become the Isle of Saints and Scholars, and preserving Western culture throughout the Dark Ages. Hundreds of years after the death of Patrick, the descendants of monks that he trained would be the bridge between the classical age of Rome and the awakening medieval era. Patrick's response to God's call in his life is what we should be celebrating on St. Patrick's Day. You know what? The church today needs more men and women like St. Patrick, who love God and in response are committed to living out God's calling in their lives, a peculiar people, indeed, who because of their love for the Father demonstrate a genuine love for people, a people who stand up for what is right and advocate in both prayer and deed for the cause of those who cannot defend themselves. Yeah, and that's part of the story of the real St. Patrick. So, it's always good to celebrate, it's always good to have fun, it's always good to remember, but we are called, that's right, we are called to do more than that, to be more than that, and to do essentially the first principle of the Christian entrepreneur. And the first principle of the Christian entrepreneur is you've got to serve. That's right. We are made for others. We are made to serve others. We're not made for a job. We're not made for careers. We're not made for riches. We're not made for fame. We're not made for popularity. We are made to serve others. And truly, if we want to make a difference in the world, we will discover who we're called to serve, and we will find our service charter, and then with courage we will press on and seek, as St. Paul, another entrepreneur, said, to make our mark. I'm Stan Houston. Just some brief reflections on St. Patrick and his day on Radio on the Edge.
by day. Oh, dear Lord, three things I pray: to see thee more clearly, love thee more dearly, follow thee more nearly, day by day.
Thank you for taking time, just a little 10 minutes on this Saturday night, Sunday, throughout, as we begin to think about what it really means to be a Christian entrepreneur on St. Patrick's Day. Hey, I'd love to hear from you. There are a lot of things that we can do to help you. Once again, tcentrepreneur.org, tcentrepreneur.org. That's where we hang out. You can reach me at radioedge77@gmail.com. That's radioedge77@gmail.com. This coming week, we're going to talk about what St. Patrick was able to do, and that's to become a man who was weak became strong. And how can we discover our strengths, become strong in the broken places, and become stronger in what we're called to be and to do? That's coming up. I hope you'll join me. All the best and blessings. Take care, and bye for now.